Debout les damnés de la terre, debout les forçats de la faim. La raison donne en son cratère, c'est l'éruption de
Hello and welcome to Crash Course History. Our subject for today will be communism.
Faisons table rase sous l'esclave, debout, debout. Le monde va changer de base, nous ne sommes rien, soyons tout.
Communism is an authoritarian left-wing concept. The idea is that there should be no private property and everything should be held in common. The idea has long been prevalent. Many ancient civilizations had rules where all debts are cancelled every certain number of years, resulting in society being equal after that number of years. The Oxford English Dictionary defines communism as a theory or system of social organization in which all property is owned by the community and each person contributes and receives according to their ability and needs. The most conversant form of communism is that which is started by the Bolsheviks after the 1917 Russian Revolution and is generally known as the system practiced by the Soviet Union and its Eastern European allies, as well as China since 1949 and countries such as Cuba, Vietnam, and North Korea. The word communism was first introduced under its new accepted meaning in 1847 upon the publication of the Communist Manifesto by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. Communism differs between theorists in the way that it should be achieved. Some believe it will occur naturally, without a certain person forcing a revolution, and others believe the group must be committed to force a revolution in favor of communism. Some believe a communist government must be elected democratically. Others believe there must be only one party for it to truly function. Communism ideology sees competition between parties as an ineffective measure of democracy and asserts that in a socialist society, pluralism only measures division and dysfunction within society. In democracy, the class struggles that arise only create a division between people and lead to a divided and unrest society. There are a couple of people who are considered the fathers of communism. Karl Marx is one of those people. He was a German philosopher, economist, social scientist, sociologist, historian, journalist, and revolutionary socialist. His ideas come from witnessing some of the worst manifestations of capitalism while living in England. He called for the outright abolition of private property and promoted the extensive reorganization of society. Marx's most famous work was called the Communist Manifesto. This publication of less than 50 pages will become the most influential European document. The key to his ideas is that the belief that communism was a historical synthesis of many revolutions over the class conflicts, resolving them once and for all. In 1867, Marxism had emerged as the single most important strand of socialism in Europe. So the next person with ideas closely tied to Karl Marx was Vladimir Lenin. Lenin was a Russian communist revolutionary, politician, and political theorist. He was the head of the Soviet Union. Hello? I'm trying to film right now. Oh, you don't know about Lenin? I'm an expert on Lenin. Here, let me just put you on speakerphone and I'll work this into the thing. So, Lenin was the head of the Soviet Union from 1922 for a short time until his death in 1944. Under Lenin's leadership, the new government nationalized the estates and crown lands. Lenin's opposition to Marxism is that capitalism could ultimately only be overthrown with a revolution rather than just the natural course of history. In many other ways, the views are very similar, with this accepted form of communism, and this idea is known as Marxism-Leninism. Lenin's only opposition to Marxism was that capitalism would ultimately need a revolution in order to turn to communism. Marx believed that it would just turn to communism with the natural course of time. Lenin also worked to counter the influence of Joseph Stalin, who we'll be talking about next, because Stalin had some very radical ideas on how communism could be formed. So Marxism-Leninism is basically a term coined by Joseph Stalin, which includes Marxism and Leninism ideas of thought. Now on to Joseph Stalin. Joseph Stalin was the leader of the Soviet Union from the mid-1920s until his death in 1953. Known as the most radical communist leader in terms of achieving his goals by pretty much any means necessary. He proved to be a very effective organizer of men, as well as a capable intellectual. Among other activities, he distributed propaganda, provoked strikes, staged bank robberies, and ordered assassinations. Stalin was known for ordering the killings of many counter-revolutionaries and former Tsarist officers in the Red Army, and burned villages in order to intimidate the peasantry into submission. Typically had deserters and renegades publicly executed as traitors. Another father of communism is Mao Zedong. He was a Chinese communist revolutionary and founding father of the People's Republic of China, which he governed as chairman of the Communist Party of China from 1949 until his death in 1976. He led China's communist revolution. Mao's ideology, called Maoism, is defined in the Communist Party of China's constitution as Marxism-Leninism applied in a Chinese context. Holding that political power grows out of the barrel of a gun, Mao Zedong thought emphasized the revolutionary struggle of the vast majority of people against the exploiting classes and their state structures, which Mao termed a people's war. Alright, so next up we have my boy Davino to talk about the offshoot and the fringe organizations of communism.
There are many countries around the world that practice communism. Russia, being the largest country in the world, is seen as the most influential communist country in the world due to their supreme superiority. And Vladimir Putin, former leader and founder of the KGB, who has access to all of that, and with people who look like that, man, I don't think other world powers would interfere with them. However, communism is strongly pushed throughout Asia and can be seen as the #1 cause for the war in Vietnam. The causes of the Vietnam War derived from the components and consequences of the Cold War. The Vietnam War revolved around the simple belief held by the Americans that communism was threatening to expand all over Southeast Asia. As a matter of fact, the occupation of Eastern Europe in the late 40s, the Korean War in the early 50s, the threat to invade Poland in the late 70s, and the invasion of Afghanistan in the late 70s, all examples of communism. So you get the idea, right? Communism was an aggressive force which destabilized many countries throughout the 20th century. Basically, most of the eastern part of the world went chaotic because of communism. Canada's Communist Party. You're right, like Canada, like there was communism in Canada. In fact, communism in Canada can be traced all the way back to the 1930s. Like many Canadian politicians at the time, Prime Minister Richard Bedford Bennett feared a communist revolution on home soil. However, while Bennett denounced communism, he was cited as the chief cause of its rise in Canada. Indeed, the communist movement in Canada found more converts as Bennett failed to provide any concrete solutions to the overwhelming economic crisis. By 1933, a quarter of the workforce was unemployed, and those who found jobs faced exploitation in their workplace. For many, communism was an alluring idea because it spoke of dignity, equality for the working class. I know, right? People were easily led into believing that communism was the way to go. However, in late 1931, Bennett enforced Article 98 of the Criminal Code, which outlawed communist agitation and required the accused to provide their innocence. The communist leader at the time, Tim Buck, and 7 others were convicted under the code. But by the end of the decade, Canadian politicians were turning their attention to another threat from across the sea. As Hitler began his march through Europe, the perceived threat of communism at home took a back seat. Thanks for tuning in. I'm going to pass it off to my boy Pat. Stay tuned for more.
Hey everyone, my name is Patrick. Today I'm going to be telling you about the consequences of and the reactions to communism in the modern day. The main consequence of communism is the number of deaths it has caused as a result of starvation and war. The massive number of deaths from starvation are a result of the transition to communism from the previous form of government. Examples of this include China's Cultural Revolution and the multiple famines that happened in Soviet Russia. These deaths occur because of famine caused by the government attempting to forcefully take control of all of the available farmland in a nation. Fun fact, every major famine in the last 100 years occurred in a communist country. Another violent consequence of communism is the Cold War. The inherent spread of a political ideology so opposed to capitalism obviously left Western powers concerned. The skirmishes and proxy wars that resulted made up a period of time known as the Cold War, which caused many deaths and had the potential to destroy the entire world. In the 20th century, more than 100 million people died because of the communist regime that they lived under. That's more than genocide and homicide combined, and only a few million fewer than both world wars. One of the nonviolent consequences of communism is standard of living going down. Stalinist Russia had a per capita standard of living 1/6 that of the US at the exact same time. Moving on to the reactions to communism, they were almost always negative because people are not willing to work as hard as they can for almost nothing. Organized anti-communist groups started popping up after the 1917 October Revolution in Russia. This caused the name to be changed from the Communist Party in most places to different things like the People's Labor Party, because just the word communism scares people. Not everyone was anti-communist, however. Many people aligned themselves with the left throughout the 20th century. A few of these include Christopher Hitchens, Michael Moore, Nelson Mandela, Matt Damon, Sean Penn, and Jon Stewart. Although generally these people kept their strongest opinions to themselves as to avoid speculation that could lead to a possible problem with authorities. Next up, we have the man, the myth, the legend, Justin Patel, talking to us about the current situation of communism.
Hi, my name is Justin, and I'm going to talk to you guys about the current status of the communist movement. During the reign of the Soviet Union, there were communist countries throughout Eastern Europe, Asia, and Africa. Communist countries in the 20th century included Afghanistan, Albania, Angola, Bulgaria, Cambodia, Congo, Czechoslovakia, East Germany, Ethiopia, Hungary, Mongolia, Mozambique, Poland, Romania, Somalia, South Yemen, Soviet Union, and Yugoslavia. Today there are only 5 communist countries in the world. Those countries are China, Cuba, Laos, North Korea, and Vietnam. The first communist country I'm going to talk to you guys about is China. So China has remained constantly communist since 1949, although economic reforms have been in place for several years. The communist movement sought to eliminate all cultural, traditional, and capitalist influences from Chinese society. The resulting conflict between young Chinese communist revolutionaries and the upper classes paralyzed the nation both socially and economically. When it became clear that Mao's ideas would ruin the nation, late 70s leader Deng Xiaoping sought to incorporate market economics into the communist ideology, and an idea that led to the quick and sustained growth that has made China a modern superpower. These principles of market capitalism are what separate Chinese communism from the original roots of the movement. The current president, Xi Jinping, was confirmed as China's state president on March 2013. So the next communist country I'm going to talk to you guys about is Cuba. A revolution in 1959 led to the taking over of the Cuban government by Fidel Castro. By 1961, Cuba became a fully communist country and developed close ties to the Soviet Union. However, Cuba's inclusion of market economics takes away its vision of true communism, but this means longer success for the nation. The next communist country I'm going to be talking to you guys about is Laos. It's officially known as the Lao People's Democratic Republic, became a communist country in 1975 following a revolution that was supported by Vietnam and the Soviet Union. The Laotian government has faced accusations of genocide as well as religious freedoms and human rights violations. The country's economic paralysis suggests that the communist experiment has put the country in financial jeopardy. Okay, the fourth country I'm going to be talking to you guys about is North Korea. Korea was captured by Japan in World War II, was divided following the war into a Soviet North and an American South. Despite being led by the USSR beginning in 1945, North Korea did not become a communist country until 1948. The Kim family became placed into hereditary rulership in the country in 2013. While the Workers' Party of Korea holds nominal power within the country, it is the Kims who control the nation. The country claims to operate according to the ideals of Juche, who has more to do with self-reliance than the contributions to a collective society rather than Marxism-Leninism. In 2009, all references to communism were taken out of the nation's constitution. The country remains under China's protection, but it has a worse reputation than other communist nations that still exist. The last country I'm going to be talking to you guys about is Vietnam. Vietnam was partitioned, which means divided, at a 1954 conference that followed the First Indo-China War. While the partition was supposed to be temporary, North Vietnam became communist and was supported by the Soviet Union, while South Vietnam was democratic and was supported by the United States. Following 2 decades of war, the two parts of Vietnam were unified in 1976. Vietnam as a unified country became communist and is ruled by the Communist Party of Vietnam. Vietnam's political and economic reforms have put it on a path towards acceptance in the global economy. Between the year 2000 and today, the economic growth of Vietnam has been among the developing world's highest, earning it an invitation to the World Trade Organization in 2007. In spite of these reforms, the nation still has significant income inequality, inequitable access to doctors, and considerable gender equality. Its market reforms have made it significantly different than it would have been had it stayed true to Marx's ideas. Had it chosen that route, it is likely that the country might have collapsed. Like most communist countries, Vietnam had to adopt some capitalist principles to survive. Thanks for listening to our crash course this week. And we'll see you next week when we talk about something else. I don't have time to play. I'm too busy doing politics.
Deng
Xiaoping sought to incorporate market economic.
And it's like a couple of them in the world. But like,
Hashtag chillin'.
So I'm gonna go like
For
this.
some reason, the only one was the people who.
No.
Yeah, sure.
I'll send you the pictures. I'm gonna send you the pictures tonight, like as soon as I get home.
You could point for the first three, and then for the people you don't have.
The communist leader at the time,
Timbuktu.
basically most of the. Oh shit.
Next up, what was I going to say?
Oh. Become inequality. Control. Okay. This is to communism.
So close.
Against the. Is it? Okay. While the part. Okay.
Yeah.
So you can start from.
I can just keep going right now, right?
Yeah, you can keep
Do
going.
that too.
So, Marx thought that Marx thought that
Okay, just keep going.
I'll start from the beginning.
Am I that funny?
Whilst.
What up, guys? From all over the world, my name is Davina. Nice to meet you. I'm here to talk about
That was actually really good. That was like a real.
Ruled by the Lao People's Revolutionary Party. Okay, that doesn't make sense either. 130,000. 100. Okay. The president is. And the Soviet Union. I almost said Soviet Union. Had been in the Soviet. Okay, that doesn't make sense. The Kim family became constitutionally placed into hereditary rulership in the communist countries in the 20th century included Czechoslovakia. Did I say Czechoslovakia? It makes sense. It makes sense now. Hello, my name is Justin, and I'll be talking to you about the current. The result.
Damn it, I fucking looked away when that happened.
This kid needs to stop fooling around and get to work.
So today, I'm going to be talking about the consequences of and the reactions to.
What's your name?
My name is Patrick.
Look up.
That made sense.